2 weekends ago, I spent a Saturday in my aunt's garage helping her sort 40 years of a house into keep, donate, and gone before she moves into something smaller. Halfway through a box of holiday decorations, she stopped, held up a chipped ceramic reindeer, and said something I haven't stopped turning over since. She said, "I wish I'd stopped paying for half of this by 50, not 79. She wasn't sad saying it. She said it the way you'd mention a shortcut you found 10 years too late. The last thing on her list is what closes this video. My aunt is comfortable. Not flashy, comfortable. The kind where money got quiet a long time ago. I'm 20 years from where she is, which is exactly why I've been paying attention. 8 things people like her stopped buying, and what each one teaches someone starting decades early. Number one, chasing the renovation everyone else was doing. For a while, my aunt gutted a bathroom every time a magazine told her to. Subway tile, then farmhouse fixtures, then the gray paint that was suddenly on every wall in America for about 4 years straight. She told me she once redid a kitchen twice in 12 years. Not because anything broke, but because the first one had gone out of style. Whatever that actually means for a room where you make eggs. Here's the math nobody says out loud. A mid-range kitchen remodel commonly runs somewhere in the tens of thousands. And when people sell, they typically recover only a portion of that back in the sale price. Do that twice in a decade, and you've handed a contractor the price of a car for a kitchen that looks almost exactly like the one you tore out. The people who stay comfortable renovate for 2 reasons only. The roof leaks, or the layout genuinely doesn't work, not because a color went out of fashion while nobody was looking. 20 years out, this is the cheapest lesson on the whole list to learn early. Nothing in your home needs to match a trend cycle you didn't sign up for. I've caught myself eyeing a countertop because of a video, not because mine was broken. Now I ask one question first. Is this actually failing, or did I just see it somewhere? Most of the time, the answer settles it before I open my wallet. Quick note before we keep going. This is general information based on patterns I've noticed, not financial advice for your specific situation. If number 1 already had you nodding along, subscribe now. Number 8 is the one that ties this whole video together, and it's the one my aunt was holding when this started. Number 2, buying to be noticed by people she'd never see again. She told me about the era she calls her logo years, the bag with somebody else's initials stamped across it, the sunglasses in the case with the name printed on the arm, the jacket she bought mostly so the tag showed. She wasn't broke buying those things. She just hadn't figured out yet who she was buying them for. Somewhere in her 50s, she said, it flipped. She stopped meeting a stranger in a parking lot to clock what she could afford. What she buys now looks almost plain. Good wool, good leather, nothing announcing itself. And she pays real money for it because it lasts 15 years instead of 2. The difference isn't cheap versus expensive. It's quiet versus loud. Here's the part that stuck with me. The only people genuinely impressed by a logo are the ones still deciding whether they can afford one themselves. Once you're actually comfortable, nobody's checking, and you stop performing for an audience that was never really watching that closely to begin with. I catch myself doing the logo years thing sometimes. At 29, buying something because of what it might say about me in a room. 20 years early, the fix is smaller than it sounds. Before a purchase, ask who this is actually for. You, wearing it on a Tuesday, or the version of you hoping someone notices at a party. One of those people is real. Number 3, an expensive hobby she picked to prove retirement had arrived, not because she loved it. A friend of hers joined a country club the month he retired. Initiation fee alone was 5 figures, then dues, then greens fees, then the lunch after every round that somehow always ran $80. He didn't play golf before he retired. He picked it because that's what retired and doing well was supposed to look like on a Tuesday morning. My aunt watched him do this and picked hiking instead. Same open Tuesday, a completely different bill. Walking, gardening, the library, a language app that costs about as much as one round of golf lunches a year. She says the hobbies that actually stuck were never the expensive ones. Those got picked for a photo and abandoned once the photo stopped feeling necessary. The real tell isn't the price tag, it's the reason. A hobby you chose because you love the actual doing of it survives contact with the random Wednesday. One you chose to look like someone who's arrived usually doesn't outlast the first slow month. 20 years out, I've started asking that question before I say yes to anything that costs monthly money for fun. Do I want the activity, or do I want to have told someone about it? If it's the second one, I've learned to just skip straight to not buying it, because that version never lasts past the first credit card statement anyway. Number 4. Shopping to fill a stretch of time that had nothing else in it. My aunt told me about a solid year, right after my uncle passed, where she'd open a shopping app at 10 at night for no reason she could name. Nothing was wrong exactly. The house was just quiet in a new way, and her thumb found something to do about it. A package would show up a few days later, and half the time she couldn't remember ordering it. She caught herself the night a delivery arrived for a kitchen gadget she already owned, still in its original box, forgotten in a cabinet. That was the moment she started asking one honest question before she checked out anything at all. Am I actually out of something, or am I just out of things to do right now? That question alone, she says, did more than any budget ever did. Because it wasn't a money problem underneath. It was an empty 10 minutes, looking for a job, and shopping kept raising its hand. She still keeps a running list now. 3 things she was actually about to order at midnight, crossed off a week later because she never once missed them. I've caught the same thing in myself. On a slow Sunday, cart full of things I don't remember wanting by Monday. 20 years early, the habit worth building isn't a stricter budget. It's letting boredom just be boring sometimes, without immediately handing it something to unwrap. The urge passes in about the time it takes to notice you're having it. Before we get to the back half of this list, drop a comment with the number 1 through 8 that's already sitting somewhere in your own house or your own calendar right now. I read all of them, and it tells me exactly which one to dig into deeper next. Number 5, chasing whatever the newest wellness fix was promising that month. For a stretch, my aunt had a drawer of things bought off ads that showed up between videos. A supplement that was supposed to fix her sleep, a gadget that was supposed to fix her posture, a powder that was supposed to fix her energy. Each one solved nothing because none of them were ever really the problem. She just liked the feeling of doing something about getting older, even when the something was $30 a month and did nothing measurable. What actually helped her, she says, embarrassingly, was walking most mornings and going to bed at a decent hour. The 2 least excitingly marketed things in existence, and the only 2 that held up past a month. There's a pattern in wellness spending nobody markets honestly. The boring habit that costs nothing usually beats the exciting product that costs $40 a month, and it isn't close. The drawer of half-used supplements is the proof, sitting in a cabinet somewhere in nearly every house I've ever helped clean out. I'm nowhere near needing joint supplements, but I've caught the same instinct already, in a different costume. The recovery gadget, the productivity app with a subscription, the thing promising to fix a habit I could fix for free with consistency. 20 years early is the best time to notice that the ad is selling a feeling, not a fix, and skip straight to the boring version that actually works. Number 6, dressing and equipping herself for a job she didn't have anymore. 2 years after she retired, my aunt was still buying the blazers, still keeping the good bag rotation, still replacing the presentable at a moment's notice wardrobe like Monday might still call her into a meeting. Nobody was asking her to look a certain way anymore. She just hadn't updated the budget line in her head that said, "This is what a person like me wears." She finally noticed it standing in a fitting room, holding a blazer identical to 4 she already owned, unworn, still tagged, hanging in a closet built for a version of her life that had ended 2 years earlier. She put it back and went home and actually counted 6 blazers, 3 unworn. That was the closet of someone still costuming for an audience that had already left the building. She donated 4 of the 6 that same week, and she says nobody in her life has noticed the difference. Not once, not even her. The lesson underneath isn't about clothes. It's about spending money to maintain a role you've already outgrown, out of habit, long after the role stopped requiring it. I do this at 29 with a different costume. The productivity tools, the desk setup, the version of look ambitious I bought before I actually needed half of it. 20 years out is early enough to ask, honestly, whether I'm equipping the job I actually have or performing one I used to want. Usually the honest answer trims the list by half. Number 7, filling every single week of the calendar so there was never a quiet one to sit in. My aunt knew a couple who retired and immediately booked something for nearly every month. A cruise, a rental, a flight somewhere, back to back, for almost 2 straight years. Not because they love travel that specifically, because an empty week on the calendar made them anxious in a way neither of them wanted to name out loud. So they kept it full instead of asking why. She told me the bill wasn't even the real cost. The real cost was that they never actually landed anywhere long enough to notice whether they liked their own life sitting still in it. Comfortable people, she said, aren't the ones with the fullest calendar. They're the ones who can look at an open Tuesday and not flinch. She learned to let a week be empty on purpose. No trip booked, nothing scheduled past groceries. And the first few times, she said, it genuinely felt like something was wrong before it started feeling like nothing was. Now she blocks off one truly empty weekend a month on purpose, no exceptions, the way other people block off a dentist appointment. I've filled my own calendar edge to edge before, mostly, if I'm honest, to avoid finding out what an unscheduled Saturday would actually feel like. 20 years early is a good time to practice sitting in one on purpose, occasionally, before retirement hands you dozens of them all at once and you've never once practiced. Number 8, and this is the one my aunt was holding when she said 50 instead of 79. For years, she was the automatic answer whenever anyone in the family came up short. A grandkid's car repair, a nephew's rent for a rough month, birthday and holiday spending that crept up every single year because saying a smaller number out loud felt like saying she loved them less. Nobody ever asked her directly for a blank check. She just kept writing them before anyone had to. What she wishes she'd done at 50, she told me, wasn't stop giving. It was set a number in advance, calmly, on a boring afternoon, instead of deciding in the moment every single time someone called with a problem. A number decided ahead of time isn't cold. It just means love and an open-ended obligation don't have to be the same account. That's what the whole garage came down to in the end. Not one box of decorations, a couple of decades of saying yes by default in a dozen different rooms of her life. Because deciding no, specifically, felt harder than just paying. I don't have grown kids pulling on a budget yet. But I've already caught myself saying yes by default in smaller rooms. A friend's fundraiser, a cousin's business idea, because the no felt ruder than the yes. 20 years early, the habit worth building is exactly hers. Decide the number on a quiet afternoon, not in the middle of someone else's emergency. None of these 8 things on their own would have changed much. A blazer here, a golf membership there, small money, most of it. What actually built the comfortable version of my aunt's life wasn't any single no. It was that she got quietly better, decade over decade, at deciding in advance instead of deciding in the moment, in a dozen unrelated corners of her spending. A closet, a garage, a calendar, a family group chat. None of them required more income. All of them required noticing. 20 years from now, I'd rather have a boring version of that same story than a dramatic one. No single moment, just a long string of ordinary decisions nobody ever throws a party for. We didn't finish that garage in one Saturday. But somewhere around box 40, my aunt looked at the pile going to donation and said, The whole thing probably would have been half the size if she'd asked one honest question 20 years earlier. Is this actually earning its place, or am I just avoiding a decision? I'm putting that question to work now, at 29, instead of at her age. And I'd rather you get the 20-year head start too. That's the head start this whole video was actually about, and it costs nothing to start today. Subscribe if you want the next one of these, and send this to whoever's got their own garage waiting on them. I'll see you in the next one.